I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am at Philadelphia Theater Company here to talk about everything is wonderful.
Broad Street Review Podcast.
And I'm here with
Philly's
one
online
of the
hub
artists
for arts and
who will be
culture
bringing
and
this piece to
commentary,
life.
where art and ideas
Stephanie
meet.
Hodge. So, welcome to
I'm
Rev
your
Radio.
host,
Thanks for having
Darnell
me on today.
Radford.
How are you today?
Today on the podcast, Stephanie Hodge talks about the Philadelphia premiere of Everything is Wonderful by Chelsea Mercantile. This production is presented by Philadelphia Theater Company. Here is my interview with Stephanie Hodge.
This fall, about 2.5 weeks into rehearsals, and realizing how much we can just trust the script itself to carry us through this incredible emotional journey for the family. It's actually, I have found it to be a lesson to me, like in trusting the piece. I need to trust myself more with it, just so that I can show up with honesty and be present for all the things that it does.
Yeah.
Just to my emotional being, and hopefully eventually to the audience too.
Yeah. I like hearing comments like that because that is the process.
Yeah.
You know? So we just keep reinstating that every time so that everybody knows, yes, this happens in every single
I
piece
don't know that it
we're
gets much easier though,
No.
even though it's always the process, learning to trust yourself.
Well, we're starting over every time. So
With a new company.
yeah, but you're coming in with all this, technique and training and whatnot, but you're still processing a new piece in a new world that's being created around you.
And it's a very particular world that this play revolves around and takes place in.
Yeah. So I met you a little while back at another theater company, but we're not talking about them. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about Stephanie.
I have been in Philadelphia now for about 1.5 years, going on 2 years. But I am from the Philly region.
Okay.
Everybody says that they grow up in the suburbs, and I essentially did, but I never, for the most part, came into the city until I went to college in the Lehigh Valley. And I was studying theater, and I quickly realized that even though I was equidistant between New York and Philadelphia, Philly was where I wanted to be seeing shows. I knew a couple of folks in town, and I was more than anything excited by the work that I saw happening. There were so many different kinds of stories, but they were all being told with so much passion and integrity and at a price point that I could frankly afford. And I really started to fall in love with the city even before I moved here.
Yeah. So now you're here
I am.
at
It's been good to me.
Philadelphia Theater Company. And so people may recognize you from Philadelphia Artists Collective.
Yes, yeah, I've done 2 shows there now.
A couple of shows there.
One at
and-
Hedgerow Theater.
Oh, yes, that's right. I did read that. So we're here to talk about Everything is Wonderful, written by Chelsea Mercantile. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of this piece, did you know anything about this piece or this story beforehand?
It's a fairly new play. We are the Philadelphia premiere. It's also been done in Baltimore, which is a little bit closer to home, and a couple other places regionally, but it's still a fairly young play. However, when you read it, it has the wisdom of something much more mature than its actual lifetime. Like, I work a lot with classical text, and while the approach that this requires of you, because the language isn't flowery so much as very Spartan, it still requires like all of the depth and the specificity of something that is more verbose. And so there's not a lot of precedent for the play because I haven't seen it. But as soon as you read it, you realize that you're in for like a kind of a wild ride. It lets you know what it wants of you, and at the same time it allows you the script to fill it in with your own humanity.
Yeah.
In a way that's actually surprisingly similar to classical work. However, coming in, our director, Noah, has worked on it twice before. So it's a really specific world taking place in an Amish community, and you can put it together that it's Lancaster because the characters are living in Philly when they leave that community. Lancaster Amish country. And Noah came in with all of this research that he had done with his prior productions, and that allowed us just to get straight to work because we had all the
great.
materials ready, and we've had a text coach come in and work with us on getting the dialect more specific. And when it comes down to it, they're just people,
Yeah.
and they have the full range of emotions that we do. They have different means of expressing them and dealing with them, and that's actually where the play comes to a head, because in some ways those traditions that they have are a gift to the community, and in other ways they make it challenging to overcome particular traumas, and that's exactly where we pick up with the characters.
Yeah. So give us the elevator pitch.
Sure.
I'm walking by you. I'm sorry, did you say something about everything is wonderful? I heard something about that, so tell me more.
So an Amish family loses their two sons to an English driver. English is what they call non-Amish people. There's a car accident and the two sons die. So that family has an older daughter and a younger daughter left. The older daughter has been excommunicated for the past 5 years for leaving the community after something really traumatic happened to her within it. And she comes back in order to find reconciliation with her family. And so you watch these 4 people, plus another member of the community who has been closely entangled in their lives, and to really complicate matters, the driver of the car, all in the same story, just revolving around each other, and the play flashes through time, so we start to put together the puzzle pieces of what happened and how on earth do you move forward from here, processing grief and finding forgiveness.
The dynamics of a great play.
Yeah.
Trapped in a box. Now, make it work.
And it just takes you away every single time that we step into scene work, even casually, just trying to figure out the mechanics of how to make a moment work better. We as actors are losing ourselves in it. We come to the end of a run and everybody is emotionally exhausted. It's heart-wrenching stuff, but it's also really funny. Chelsea knew what she was doing when she wrote this. There's a lot of levity and buoyancy in it. That's very much, I think, where my character comes in too.
Okay.
As the younger sister. She's a source of light for a lot of her family members, and I think the community at large. And that's an interesting place for me to come in, no pressure, right?
Yeah.
Just be somebody who's naturally uplifting and so certain of her faith.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to put out there, because sometimes you think, oh, I don't know if that's going to be too heavy for me. And it's well, it's going all over the place to tell this story.
Yeah.
So it is handling life in all of its forms. It's not
Absolutely.
It's not just living in the tragic moments of it. It's also living around it and figuring out how these people get on with their lives.
I mean, it really resembles real life in that fashion, that you get all of the colors. And Noah, as director, has been very he's been very mindful of making sure that we maintain as much levity as the script offers, because the subject matter is quite heavy.
Yeah. What were your thoughts when you read it on your own, and how did it feel at the first read?
When I read it on my own, I had I'm an actor, so I'm always reading a script because I'm hoping to have something to do with its birth on the stage, right? And I found Ruth in that read that I did on my own pretty quickly, I, by virtue of where I am in my career, tend to play a lot of younger siblings. And I am lucky to have a wonderful, loving family and an older sister, just like in the play, who was and continues to be my best friend and such a foundational force on my life. And so that was my way into the story.
Yeah.
Like I read the part of Ruth, and I saw how everything that she does spawns out of this love that she has for the people she holds dear. And it's not often that we get the gift of somebody who shows us how fortunate we are in our own lives. Because so often when we're doing or we're putting together a theatrical piece, because all of the interest lies in conflict, it can be often like an activity in accessing your anger and your hurt and like finding that like really roiling place within your heart. And Ruth definitely has that stuff, but she is really certain of her belief in goodness and in God, and love is the driving force for her, and she just wears it on her sleeve, and there's so much purity in that. I still feel like I'm trying to live up to the character, just to come into the room and have the kind of simplicity and warmth that she does.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I've got a sister, and that's where I started. It's like I love her more than anything. So let's start there.
Did you know much about Amish culture or way of life beforehand?
Gosh, not much. No, definitely not much. I grew up.
Or what did you know? Because
Okay.
there are people on the outside. We think Amish. We think, we do think Lancaster, but we think, that corner in Reading Terminal.
Yeah.
But what did you know ahead?
So growing up in the Philadelphia suburbs, I was in Royersford. I went to Springford High School. And my mom, who's also a rather pious Christian woman, she really gravitated to the simplicity of the Amish lifestyle. So about once or twice a year when I was little, we would take a field trip out, my mom and me, to Lancaster County, and we would go to the supermarket and go through some of the thrift stores that were in the area, and just like generally kind of obliquely be in that world for a moment. And it's not like you get into conversations with the people who are of that culture.
Yeah.
Because you also don't want to come through like with no sensitivity to the fact that this is just somebody's life. But like, because my mom was so admiring of them, I had that very small bit of exposure, and we would like, oh gosh, when I was little, my family member or my friends and family members would go to Shady Maple, like where the smorgasbord is, and then that great like buffet restaurant with just good home cooking, and that would be like the place to celebrate a birthday because you get in for free on your birthday. So I had one big toe in that world, but I didn't know all the specifics. I mean, you don't learn all of the specifics in a 2.5-week rehearsal process either, to come to the point that we are currently. But my appreciation, my respect for them has grown astronomically with the materials that Noah has brought in and the conversations we've had.
You said in your reading you sort of gravitated towards the character of Ruth. Did you find her voice early? When did you find her voice in this process?
I'm still working on it. No, truly, I think that so much of what we do is a constant. We're constantly working to get closer to the truth of something. it's a progression over time. And as the play, our production of it comes into tighter focus, I think that I find my footing more and more. But I'm always hoping to get deeper.
Yeah.
And gosh, when we did our first table read, and we had as many designers in the room as were available to come in, and a couple of the patrons of PTC. So there was actually quite a group around us. But here were the 6 of us, and our stage manager, and our assistant stage manager, and Noah, all at this circle of tables, and we read the play for the very first time. And there was nothing like getting to see or hear what the other actors cast brought to the table. Like, the amount of humanity and consideration and humor that all of them brought in with the work that they had done at home, even before the first rehearsal. It was like, oh, we can do this. There's something really special happening here. That's the work, though. Like, as we keep finding more depth in it, how do you let the character come into its own as a rounded person?
Yeah.
You know, with both the pain of loss and the hopes for more in the future, but like the joy of just kind of being on the earth and finding comfort in other people.
Yeah.
Like,
we're all living documents, so we're just adding pages and pages to the Bible that is this piece. So it is quite a valid comment to say that you're still finding her voice, because everyone is still continuing to evolve in this.
yeah. And I think that the further that you get in the work on a play and on a character, the more you can afford to learn. Like, it feels like I was just learning how to crawl at the beginning of these couple of weeks, and now that I'm starting to like get that under my belt, now how can I run and skip and start to like find a little bit more nuance? And with any luck, that's how the whole run goes, because as the other actors play around and live with where they are when they show up to the theater every night, the play changes, because we have to live in conversation with each other too. It's not just us and the script, it's like us and what kind of afternoon we just got shot out of. Like, coming to the theater, all of that is alive in the body.
Are there, if you can talk about them without giving key moments away, are there moments in the piece that sort of stand out for you that kind of, when you get to them, you're like, oh, just...
Well, this play is pretty unique in that most of the time when we do our runs of either act, and as of today, the full play, as we really start to piece it all together, you can look around the room, and at any point there's like at least 3 other actors watching the work being done on stage, which is pretty impressive because there's only 6 of us. Like, everybody is riveted by the work that's happening, because the story is that good and the work on it is that good. Like, the cast that we have is ridiculous. We've got a couple actors who were brought in from New York and a couple of Philly natives, and altogether just the dynamic that was almost immediately apparent. It was so rife with support for the work that one another was doing, and so like at any moment, like, the play is captivating like that. As far as the actual storytelling beats, I would be giving something away. Absolutely. But like the scene work that happens between 2 characters, as like you watch a negotiation happen. For instance, the play revolves around Miri. She's the daughter who was excommunicated and then comes back. And one scene in particular between her and Eric, the driver of the car who hit the boys, as they really start to delve into what they're both doing back at this house, or in Eric's case, like, he showed up hoping that he could get some answers and maybe some repercussions could fall on him because he was excused from his guilt in the car accident. Like, he came looking for something to happen to him, like send him to jail. He wants to feel as though the world doesn't just keep spinning because something bad has happened. And so he comes for answers, and he ends up finding forgiveness from this family because that's their lifestyle. And the oldest daughter comes back looking for a similar kind of forgiveness, and she's not able to find it as easily. So you're left with these two people who are outsiders in a place that is not their own, both trying to figure out why they're there and how to get what they need out of their time there in order to move on. And of course there's a lot of antagonism there because one person is responsible for the death of her brothers, and she is not open-hearted to him. And like the scene is actually a leveling of what they are struggling with individually, and like you start to watch them find each other as, instead of enemies, maybe potential friends. Like there's an understanding of grief and pain and brokenness between the two of them.
Yeah.
And at
Which
first,
is really hard to process when emotions are running high.
yeah, and the stakes are as high for those two people in that moment as they ever are in life.
Yeah.
And like when you first read the script, the scene kind of consists of like a series of longer speeches, just like one on top of the next. And the actors came in, and the first read was incredible, but they said to Noah, the director, like, it kind of feels like we're talking at each other. And that was, days maybe 1 through 3. And then suddenly, as they staged it and they started finding the moments that lead to greater connection, I can't stop watching the scene. Like, I don't have any reason to be on the corner of the stage, but I stay there because, like, the small ways that they find to offer help to one another and to, like, reveal some sort of painful truth about themselves in order to find that common ground, it's a really vulnerable, interesting kind of negotiation. So that's one moment, but like the whole play is just full of activities and revelations that might seem modest or small or humble to us because we're used to this life in a city, and are actually, for the characters, some of the most seismic conversations that anybody could have, but because of the world that it takes place in, you can have the conversations that really mean something as you're doing work on the farm or cleaning up in the kitchen. And it's a really fascinating kind of like lens shift, I think, for an audience and certainly for us as actors.
Yeah. Is there anything your character or the characters are doing that are sort of the Amish way that you draw similarities in your own life, or see like, wow, maybe I could incorporate that into my life, or there is no way I would ever put this, incorporate this into my life?
I mean, I guess that's the whole thrust of the play. That the way that these people live is, if they are wronged, they forgive the person who is responsible for that wrong, and then they just move on. Like, forgiveness is the way of life. The trope in the play is speak, forgive, forget. If you go before the community and you say what it is that you're sorry for and you own it, the community meets you there with forgiveness, and then you get to move on with a clean slate. And of course, it's never that easy, which is why in the play, when one character really wrongs another one and she doesn't have the means to process her hurt because nobody talks about it after forgiveness, quote unquote, is given.
It's like, I'm not done unpacking this.
Exactly. And that's why, in the case of Miri, she leaves the community and leaves a broken family behind. Like, we're dealing with both sides of it. And that's, I think, one of the just strokes of genius that Chelsea has given us in the play itself, is that there are multiple sides to every element. Like, even the characters who could be problematic or maybe even, like, fall into the villain kind of archetype by necessity, because theater needs drama, needs conflict, needs somebody who's doing something wrong. It's actually not that simple. Everybody is likable and everybody is kind of despicable in their own way. Like, it's a story full of people who are actual people. Like, none of us are, you and me walking around, are perfectly good or perfectly bad. And that's, I mean, how do you do that with 6 people on a stage in 2 hours? Like, it's a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I go home at the end of this, and not only am I emotionally exhausted by the work that we're doing, but it makes me want to reach out to my family more often, to catch up with them on the phone. And I can tell you, I really miss my sister.
Aw.
I don't see her nearly enough. Like, this is making me miss her very badly. And thinking of the ways that I can try to be more patient and more forgiving. That's always something to esteem toward.
We're somewhat fortunate and also kind of troubled by our ability to communicate with people through modern technology and social media. You know, when you're talking about, you know, connecting with your sister, like, you'd have that opportunity, but, like, if you didn't have those capabilities, those emotions would be even further apart.
I guess so. There never, I mean, even with technology, though, there never seems to be enough time in the day. And I think one of the things that I know I definitely struggle with, and it seems as though other people might too, because the world is so connected, sending a text message or giving somebody a phone call, it actually doesn't feel like enough because everything comes so easy. I never am sure that I properly express my appreciation to people in my life. And that's just something to kind of constantly live with. Like, how do we meet somebody in a way that they receive what we're saying in the spirit being offered?
Yeah. How long do you think you could bear in a world without, or not a world, but in a space without the comforts of modern abilities? Have you given it any thought?
Not actively, to be honest.
I was thinking about this because, like, you know, if you're sitting in your living room and you don't turn anything on,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes there's dead space and you're like, maybe I should listen to music or turn on a
Right.
podcast. And I don't know what's going on at Rep Radio. But sometimes it's like, can I just sit here with my thoughts or, you know, pick up a book
Yeah.
or a task that I've been putting off without all of that other distraction, like, sort of, here, let me challenge this part of my brain while I
Right.
do this one thing.
Always multitasking.
Yeah.
And I know in my case, I often try to block out the noise of my own brain by, like, filling it in with a podcast or with music or something else. And that's something that Eric, the non-Amish person who comes to the Amish community looking for answers to his own problems, because it's his problems that led him to the car that day, to the accident with the boys, et cetera, he actually gives up his technology at one point as he tries to really lean into the opportunities given to him in this new world, new to him. So it's probably something that Jay Hernandez, playing Eric, has actively thought about. I mean, that's kind of where I am in small ways, day to day, like trying to not be engaged with my phone when I'm talking to somebody, when I'm home with my partner, trying to put that down so that we can have a conversation without distractions.
Yeah.
Trying to read more often than any other kind of entertainment, instead of putting on the TV and just like letting myself zone out. Because there's a time for that too.
Or shouting into the void
Right.
that is the news cycle.
Oh man, don't get me started.
Yeah.
So I think that for like the health of our minds and our spirits, we need to find the ways to set our boundaries with the total availability that we have to each other and to the world, because otherwise it's too much noise.
Mm-hmm.
So it would probably be very hard and very uncomfortable to go into a lifestyle without any of those amenities.
Yeah.
And it might actually be a gift once we got there
Mm-hmm.
and got over the hump.
Yeah, I feel like anything we say, oh no, I could never do that, sort of a few minutes into it, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. I'll get a little bit of it here and there. So we haven't quite opened yet, but have you identified anything that you will most certainly take away from this experience yet?
Greater sense of gratitude, I think, for so many things, for my family, and for the fact that I have not, thankfully, blessedly, experienced the kind of loss that this family has, for the love and support that I've always been given in my life, for the opportunities afforded me in this city. I never thought I'd be working at Philadelphia Theater Company at this point in my career, so that's incredible. Gratitude for getting to work on this beautiful story with this beautiful group of people. The way that Noah has led us so thoughtfully through the work, and even though he knows the story really intimately, having worked on it twice before, made a lot of room right away for what we brought to the table as a new group. I'll be so grateful for all of that, and I'm really hoping that we're going to connect with people as they come to see it, and that friendships evolve out of this, friendships with the people that I get to be in a family with for a little while, and because this story it just opens the chest cavity right up and takes you straight to the heart of things. I think that it's a real opportunity for conversations with people, kind of a similar ilk. Like, what are you grateful for? What have you struggled with? Let's be a little community for one another, because we're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
In a world that doesn't have any clear-cut answers.
Yeah. And so you don't have to walk in the theater with everything figured out, because Everything is Wonderful is on stage at Philadelphia Theater Company. Mm-hmm. And if you're listening to this now, you can definitely get tickets. So you can go to philatheaterco.org or Philadelphia Theater Company. You could search it and find it. And get a few tickets, because theater is more fun with a +1. Stephanie, thank you for taking the time to chat with me and sort of unpack the complexity of this piece. I was going through all kinds of things, just trying to think of what I wanted to know about this, what I wanted to know from you about this. But thank you for going on this journey with me, and I can't wait to experience this in the theater with all of you.
I look forward to hearing what you have to say once you do. There's no way that I could ever do it justice in conversation, so just come experience it.
Yes.
And then talk to us afterward, because that's actually what it's all about.
Will do. All right. Thanks a lot. Truly a pleasure.
Thanks, Darnell.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.